Namaskar, welcome to India First. The National Security Advisor Ajit Doval is scheduled to meet the Chinese State Councillor Yang Jiechi later this week, and they are the special representatives engaged in dialogue on the boundary question as well. But the talks assume significance as they come a few days after the 6th plenum of the 18th Communist Party Congress, which named the Chinese President Xi Jinping as the core leader. Also, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just spent Diwali on the Indo-China border with the IDBP personnel. There are several irritants that have crept into the Sino-India relationship, one of the factors being Pakistan, the Chinese blocking India's entry into the NSG on a technicality and again putting a technical hold on India's move to bring a UN ban on the JEM terrorist Masood Azhar. Well, to discuss what can be expected from this important meeting, we have with us in the studio Mr. Jaidev Ranade, is a foremost expert on China and a former additional secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat. And we have Pinakaranjan Chakrabarti, well-known security affairs analyst and former secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. We'll start with you, Mr. Ranade. Let's put this into context. It's just happened after that 6th plenum of the 18th Party Congress, and the core leader, the president is the core leader now.
By giving him the status of a core leader, by designating him a core leader, what the 18th Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party has done is given him greater political authority. Titles, in fact, he holds more posts, formal posts, than any other Chinese Communist Party leader so far. But by getting this, it is expected that it will help him to overcome whatever factional differences there are and push through the policies that he wants to. I think, if I may just take a second more, another important aspect of this is that by designating him a core leader, the 348 members of the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee who did the voting, they've also endorsed his policies that he has carried out so far, and thereby giving him more strength, as it were, for pushing through the rest of the
Right. So, Mr. Chakrabarti, what can be expected from Xi Jinping now that he's the core leader? Because the others who were named core leader are Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping and Jiang Zemin. So, I mean, he's in this illustrious company.
Yes, he's kind of joined the pantheon of gods or something like that. But yes, I don't think, as Mr. Ranade just said, that it's an endorsement of his policies. So you might see continuation of the same policies, but you might also see some changes. Now, where those changes will come, I do not know. But let us hope for the best, that some change for the good might come. But I, frankly, am pessimistic about any major changes in Chinese policy.
Mr. Ranade, the Prime Minister has just spent Diwali on the Indo-China border. Was that a signal, you would think, or it's just sandesh to soldiers?
Can I just go back a minute to
sure,
a comment made by my colleague here? He spoke about his pessimism, and I think that's well-founded. I'll just add here that in the plenum document, it's about 6,000 words long, but they also made a reference, fairly strong reference, to what is going on in Hong Kong at the moment, and said the people of Hong Kong have to learn to stand with the rest of the people. In other words, they will not tolerate this attempt, calls for independence, etc. So it fits in with what he just said. Policies. I think, yes, our Prime Minister's visit to the border is a signal. It's a signal that he pays great attention to the welfare of the troops there. Are there for an important purpose. So I think, much as the Chinese leaders have been visiting on their side of the border, places in Tibet like Ningxia and Pai, so our leadership is now also going there, and they're indicating that the borders are sacrosanct and they are going to defend them. So I think there is a signaling which is going on.
Mr. Chakrabarti, one of the concerns on the border has been that, the Chinese side of the border has been well developed, but the Indian side has not. Of course, the Prime Minister has been visiting the border, not the first time. So are we likely to see, a lot more development on the Indian side of the border?
I think development on the Indian side of the border is already has been fast-tracked, and Arunachal particularly, where we didn't have much, access to right to the border except by foot. There, I think roads are coming up very rapidly, and also other sectors, the middle sector and others, where we didn't have too much of infrastructure, they are coming up. I think infrastructure is very important because if you have to station large numbers of troops along the border, infrastructure is very important, and also it's good for the morale of the people, the villagers and others who live there. I think one other aspect of that Prime Minister's visit to the border, he also visited a village where those people are, they are kind of even the civilians there are a kind of a first line of defense in many ways.
Right.
They live there, they are looking around, they are grazing, etc. So they can see what's happening. So they sometimes alert our troops also as to something which they can see, and the troops can then go ahead and check it out.
Right. Mr. Ranade, also let's look at a few other aspects. The U.S. ambassador also visited Arunachal Pradesh recently, and China, we're a little concerned about that. India also has boycotted Chinese goods. Diwali also, people used Indian-made products, etc. Are these also some sort of signals in a sense?
Well, as far as the boycott is concerned, it is informal. I mean, it's purely voluntary, and but it is a signal of sorts. I think the Chinese would have interpreted it as that people in favor of China, the numbers have gone down, and that is something that should concern them because they're putting a lot of money into propaganda and trying to build up their image. The other thing about the ambassador going there, I think it's a move that is obviously got a political message which the Americans by going there at this time. We have of course allowed him to go, as we would allow him to go to Chennai or Bangalore and anywhere else, I suppose. But as far as the Chinese are concerned, they would have noted that he, and therefore they would look at it as some kind of a political message which is being given. But I don't think from India's side it indicates any change in our policy on this issue.
So Mr. Chakrabarti, let's look at some of the irritants then in the relationship currently. The issue of the admission into the nuclear suppliers group, which China holds a technicality that India has not signed the NPT. There has been progress, to some extent, because the nuclear negotiators have met, and even the Prime Minister raised it at the BRICS summit on the sidelines. So, obviously this is going to be a subject of discussion at the NSA level. What do you think? Are we like to see some forward movement?
Well, I think the meeting is taking place itself is a kind of a positive sign because the channels are being kept open, and of course NSG membership will be discussed, I'm sure, and we already have had a couple of rounds of discussions on that between our our points person in MEA and his counterpart.
Joint Secretary Disarmament.
Disarmament. Yeah. So there may be discussion on that, and Chinese may well just trot out the same old argument saying that no, it's not us who are blocking it. There are other countries also. That's the kind of argument they've been using. Now, it's all right that we are pressing for it. Frankly, we don't need this membership in many ways. Many people believe that it's not really required for our nuclear program, for our nuclear power program, but it is something which we feel that we are entitled to join, particularly after the nuclear agreement and things like that. So in a way, Chinese are probably on the defensive on this because they have to defend as to why they are not allowing this to happen. So in a sense, it's a bit of a diplomatic kind of a sort of toing and froing will take place. Right. So that's as much as I can say on the NSG.
Mr. Ranade, a majority of the NSG already is accepting India's. It's only China raising a technical issue and a few other countries which support. But obviously, over time that technical issue has to be sorted out, isn't it?
Exactly. Actually, how serious and how principled the Chinese stand is open to question. They've called it a matter of principle. But if you look at the last NSG meeting, they came out in a span of about 15 days with 4 different arguments as to why India should be kept out. I mean,
yes.
apart from saying that, exceptions should not be made for us, and then saying that Pakistan should be treated on par, and etc., and we should sign the NPT. Final position was both should sign the NPT. But I would say I'll make 2 points here. One is that, as we know, that the next discussions are coming up in December.
Right.
So I think it's quite on course for us to take it up with Yang Chichar this time, and to try and see whether the Chinese can pull back from their position. I personally doubt that they will, but at least we should make an effort.
Okay.
And the second thing is to try and impress upon them that our record has been absolutely clean so far. And it's a bit rich, I would say, for China and Pakistan to start citing examples when both have been violators of the AIEA norms.
So you brought in the question of Pakistan. Mr. Chakravarti, why is the factor of Pakistan suddenly crept into the Indo-China relationship? I mean, this is one of the irritants, because it seems to be, there's a Pakistan focus to some extent in the relationship, which need not be there. I mean, these are the 2 Asian giants. After all, why should Pakistan be a factor?
Let us not forget that China has invested in Pakistan right from the Bangladesh war, where they actually supported Pakistan, and after that the missile and the nuclear technology and nuclear bomb technology that was transferred by China.
Right.
The question is, why did they do that? Because they feel India is their common target. In Pakistan, of course, we know, and China uses Pakistan as a proxy to as far as India is concerned. So China has invested a lot, and they are investing much more now in the CPEC and other
46 billion
corridor
China,
and
Pakistan
things like
economic
that.
corridor. Yes.
So for China, Pakistan is a proxy as far as India is concerned, to keep India sort of in check, because otherwise these 2 countries have nothing in common, apart from, I mean, neither culturally nor religious nor anything. They have nothing in common except their common interest, this common strategic interest of boxing in India in the subcontinent.
Sure.
It is like my friend's enemy is my friend.
Right. So my friend's enemy is my friend cannot continue forever, especially if my friend's enemy, so to speak, is an aider and abetter of terrorism, and for that matter, which terrorism can creep into China as well and cause some problems for them. And I'm sure, I mean, much of the focus of this meeting is going to be on counter-terrorism, because at least, I mean, the Prime Minister did say when the BRICS summit was on, that India and China should see, eye to eye as far as counter-terrorism is concerned as well.
Exactly. In fact, apart from boxing India in, China also has a strategic interest in Pakistan, or rather in parts of Pakistan, if I may say, in the northern part where they're doing a lot of construction, and in Gwadar, because of their ambitions to get into warm waters of Indian Ocean. But apart from that, they've invested a lot already, they've committed a lot. It's a sort of colonization of Pakistan that is taking place. So I think their involvement with Pakistan is now much larger than it was even 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago. That is one point.
Sure.
Second is what you said about terrorism. It will be an important subject. The Prime Minister has raised it, NSA has raised it, but the Chinese are being very selective about what they define as terrorism and what they do not, as we have seen in the case of the 4 interventions that they made in the UN Sanctions Committee. But the danger for China is actually that the Wakhan corridor, that the CPEC itself will become a pathway for the terrorists, for the Islamic terrorists, as well as the Uyghurs, to get back into China, into Xinjiang, and create more of a problem. In fact, Chinese official think tanks have already noted that the violence has spilled over outside the boundaries of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region to other parts, and they are fearful that these people will come back and create more mayhem. There are already 300 officially estimated fighters outside. The Iranians are also training, the Turks are also training Uyghurs, about 1,000 of them. They would likely
So what you're saying is that the economic corridor will facilitate this?
It will facilitate, and China actually needs to firewall itself from now, for which it needs assistance from countries like us before it finds that it is facing the music alone.
We'll continue the discussion. We're going to take a short break at this point in time. You're watching India First. We are discussing Sino-Indian relations in the context of the meeting that is to take place between the NSA, Mr. Ajit Doval, and the State Councillor, Mr. Yang Jiechi.
समझ गए साहब? गुड, वेरी गुड। एक बार फिर करेंगे। भूकंप आते ही खुली जगह में जाओ। ना जा पाए तो पहले झुको,
सर को ढको, किसी चीज को मजबूती से पकड़ो या किसी कोने में सर ढककर खड़े हो जाओ। आप भी भूकंप से बचना सीखिए। तैयारी में है समझदारी। आपके हित में तत्पर एनडीए में।
फायर करता हूं मैं तेज और जोरदार। प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करना अच्छा लगता है। ऊंचाई पर बैठे दुश्मन से मुकाबला प्रॉब्लम है। 2 पॉइंट्स डाउन होना प्रॉब्लम है। और प्रॉब्लम्स जितनी बड़ी, जीत उतनी खास। What do I like more? जंग लड़ना या पिस्टल फायर करना? I like the fact कि मैं दोनों भारत के लिए करता हूँ।
हम है भारत के सबसे एक्साइटिंग वर्क प्लेस और हम दे रहे हैं आपको एक ऑफर। भारतीय सेना, आम नहीं ये जिंदगी।
आप समझ क्यों नहीं रहे? वो बहुत परेशान करते हैं मुझे। रैगिंग के नाम पे टॉर्चर करते हैं।
सीनियर्स रैगिंग नहीं करेंगे तो तुम स्मार्ट कैसे बनोगे? तुम्हारा कॉन्फिडेंस कैसे बढ़ेगा? बी ए मैन। आई एम सॉरी बेटा, आई एम रियली सॉरी।
आपके बच्चे की छोटी सी शिकायत किसी बड़ी मुसीबत का पैगाम हो सकती है। उसे नजरअंदाज ना करें। डोंट इग्नोर, टेक एक्शन।
People think techies are chained to their desks. Not me. I run UAVs. You know, drones. I have to say, it's pretty awesome. I grew up playing video games. And who would have thought that'll help me defend my country? Not my mom at least. We get there first and see what's around the corner so that there are no surprises for the rest of the team. We go everywhere, working with the latest and the best technology. But no Facebook.
We are India's most exciting workplace and we are making you an offer. The Indian Army. Live a life less ordinary.
बच्चन जी,
बोलिए बच्चा जी।
आपने वो फिल्म जादूगर की थी ना?
ना की थी।
तो मुझे जादू दिखाइए।
अच्छा। ये देखो, मैं यहाँ पत्थर मारूंगा, यहाँ से कबूतर चिड़िया सब निकलेंगे। वो गया, देखो कबूतर चिड़िया सब उड़ गए।
बच्चन जी।
हाँ जी।
बस इतना ही?
हाँ, और क्या?
अब मेरा जादू देखिए। ये वाला पत्थर वहाँ मारूंगा और इंसान निकलेंगे।
इंसान?
हाँ, इंसान। देखो।
अरे कौन है भाई?
देखो, देखो।
अरे यार, क्यों तुम लोग गांव की इज्जत पे धब्बा लगा रहे हो? बाहर से लोग आएंगे तो क्या सोचेंगे? स्वच्छ भारत अभियान के अंतर्गत भारत सरकार जो है वो शौचालय बनाने में मदद कर रही है। तो आप भी अपने घर में शौचालय बनाइए। परिवार कम से कम ये समझदार आदमी की तो सुन लीजिए।
Welcome back. You're watching a discussion on Sino-India relations in the context of the NSA, Mr. Ajit Doval's meeting this week with the State Councillor of China, Mr. Yang Jiechi. And we have with us in the studio Mr. Jaidev Ranade, former Additional Secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat, who's a China expert, and Pinak Ranjan Chakrabarti is a former Secretary, the Ministry of External Affairs. Mr. Chakrabarti, you know, these two gentlemen are also the designated special representatives on the boundary question, but they're not discussing the boundary this time. But the importance of the State Councillor is that he is senior to the foreign minister actually, so, and a very important voice on foreign policy in China. So there's a lot that can be put on the table, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I think while this is not the meeting of the special representatives who discuss the border issue, but it is a meeting where the same two people are going to meet in their different capacities. And yes, I think the border issue, I mean, they will exchange notes on the border, when to meet next, etc.
Right.
But again, as Xi Jinping has said, that we must leave the issue of the border to the next generation, which is simply like kicking the can down the road. And so in a sense, there is not much expectation that one can have, or even on the border question. So I think it's basically it's a exercise in keeping channels open, exchanging views,
Okay.
and making incremental progress on various issues that are on the bilateral agenda. But may I also point out that China did issue a statement on this business of not buying Chinese
Products,
goods,
yes,
etc.
yes.
Obviously, it must have bothered them to an extent that there was this raging social media campaign to get people in India, consumers in India, to start boycotting Chinese goods. So obviously that was a signal they picked up.
Right. And let's look at the trade angle as well, Mr. Ranade. I mean, obviously it's heavily in benefit of China, the trade imbalance. And I mean, one has to try and correct that. But really not much can be done or has been done to, correct that over time. Only if India really starts boycotting Chinese goods, maybe things will improve. And they open their markets to our pharmaceutical products and IT.
Actually, you're right that not much has been done. There are various reasons for that. But the meeting of these two officials now, Yang Jiechi as well as Mr. Ajit Doval, is important, apart from the reasons that were mentioned. Also because both of them deal with a wide range of issues. It's not just one dealing with China and the other dealing with India. They're also the interlocutors for their countries with a whole lot of other major powers.
Okay.
They're also looking at trade, etc. So I think while they are likely to discuss the imbalance in trade and the need to rectify that, there are 2-3 ways at which it can be done. One is China has to lift the blocks that it has put, the restraints it has put on the entry of our pharma, IT, health, etc. sectors into China.
Okay.
And basically have to introduce more transparency in their rules, because what they do is that when a person gets ready to come in the company, they're suddenly told that because of so-and-so rule you can't come, and that rule is classified. So things like that have to be sorted out. The second is, in my personal opinion, that we need to be more judicious about which Chinese companies we allow in here and how do we allow them to come in the sense when we are looking at, for example, even big electricity projects.
Okay.
A company like State Grid, if it comes in, it's linked with the PLA, it has intelligence connections.
Okay.
Should we allow them to come? What can be the ramifications? If we start putting them through a stricter security process, I think that will also help get the Chinese to soften their position, as well as introduce some balance into the adverse trade. But it will take time. We also have to build up our own capabilities.
Right.
So it will take time.
And once again, Mr. Chakrabarti, the issue of Masood Azhar. I mean, can that be overcome? Because that also is a technical hold that China has put on this on the UN ban, and that's going to expire in December. So, I mean, perhaps this can be achieved.
Well, again, the technical
the two countries have to see there should not be differences on counterterrorism. At least that's, and the countries have accepted that they should not be having differences on counterterrorism.
Again, here, I mean, it's Pakistan which is a factor, and so far the Chinese have extended their protection, so to speak. So the technical hold is similar to the technical hold in the NSG as well. Now, whether the UN actually sanctions, puts him on the list or not, is on the ground a little immaterial. And he in any case cannot get out. I think if he tries to get out, he'll be caught somewhere or the other.
Sure.
So I think, and he's of course conspiring there.
Right.
More clinical way that even if he's put on the list, so what? I mean, okay, we gain a brownie point there, but ultimately he is in Pakistan, and Pakistan is helping him organize various things.
Okay. Finally, Mr. Ranade, the last question. Xi Jinping is the core leader, and when we look at the long-term relationship between India and China, how important is this relationship for him?
I think if he wants to achieve his China dream, which is a mixture of 3 things, it's improving the wealth or the prosperity of the Chinese people, making the country strong, and rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. He needs India's cooperation. He cannot afford to have an antagonistic India on this side. For realization of the One Belt, One Road, which is one of his great geo-economic initiatives also, he requires India's cooperation. I mean, you're already seeing the manner in which one comment by our Prime Minister about Balochistan has actually put the entire China-Pakistan economic corridor into jeopardy.
Okay.
So he has to balance what he does, and I think get India on board and
absolutely
get it on.
First. Well, the Asian giants India and China have a complex relationship. Prime Minister Modi had said in a TV interview that foreign policy is not about changing mindsets, but President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Goa. The Prime Minister said that India and China cannot afford to have differences on terrorism. The PM had also raised the issue of the NSG membership then, and the country's nuclear negotiators are in touch with each other. The Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson had said after that Goa meeting between the Prime Minister and the Chinese President, and I quote, "We are coordinating more closely and speaking more frankly to each other," unquote. That's all we have time for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Namaskar.